It's Doug Giles, I think, if I remember right, is the guy that runs the site. And on his site is a letter from Mike Adams. This letter is a total slapdown of the feminazis who have taken over the university system, not only in North Carolina, but all over America. And if you wonder why or how a very young woman could think it was acceptable to act out sex on national TV, you really don't have to look any further than what is going on in the classrooms of several hallowed American universities. Now, Mike Adams, who wrote the letter I'm going to read excerpts from, Mike Adams is a lone conservative tenured professor in the University of North Carolina system. He is a criminology professor at the University of North Carolina, and he has the audacity to be outspoken on the definition of marriage as that being a union between a man and a woman. This has caused controversy out the wazoo throughout the University of North Carolina system. And he ended up getting a very nasty email from another professor named Ed. I don't have the guy's last name, doesn't matter. The letter said, the professor said that Mike Adams was an embarrassment to higher education because of his definition of marriage. So Adams took that as an opportunity to fight back with his own words. And as you read this letter, as I read this letter to you that Mike Adams wrote this, remember what this is about now. Mike Adams, the only tenured conservative professor at University of North Carolina system, simply said that marriage is a union between a man and a woman. And that caused anger and outrage and demands that he be fired. So he wrote back to the professor that caused all the grief. And when you read this, you'll find out that this professor who criticized Adams is the real embarrassment to higher education. Dear Edward, it begins, I want to take the time to thank you for writing and telling me that I should be fired from my position as a tenured professor because I am the biggest embarrassment to higher education in America, as you said. I also want to thank you for responding when I asked you exactly how you arrived at that conclusion. Your response, quote, because you insist that marriage requires one man and one woman. That was helpful and concise, Ed. Now, while I respect your right to conclude that I'm the biggest embarrassment to higher education in America, I think you're wrong. In fact, I don't even think I'm the biggest embarrassment to higher education in the state of North Carolina, but since you're a liberal and you support choice, provided we're talking about dismembering children and not school vouchers for those who weren't dismembered, I want to give you some options, Ed. In fact, I'm going to describe the antics of 10 professors, official campus groups, and invited campus speakers in North Carolina and let you decide which constitutes the biggest embarrassment to higher education. Number 1, in the early spring semester of 2013, a women's studies professor and a psychology professor at Western Carolina University co-sponsored a panel on bondage and S&M. The purpose of the panel was to teach college students how to inflict pain on themselves and others for sexual pleasure. When you called me the biggest embarrassment in higher education, Ed, you must not have known about their bondage panel. Maybe you were tied up that evening, couldn't make it. Number 2, at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, there's a feminist professor who believes that women can lead happy lives without men. Now, that's nothing new. But what's different, Ed, is that she thinks women can form lifelong domestic partnerships with dogs, and that those relationships will actually be fulfilling enough to replace marital relationships with men. She's teaching this stuff, Ed. I can't make it up. I don't drop acid. Well, at least not since the late 80s. But I promise this story is real. Number 3, at Duke University, feminists hired a sex worker, i.e. prostitute, to speak as part of an event called Sex Workers Art Show. After his speech, the male prostitute pulled down his pants, got down on his knees, and inserted a burning sparkler into his rectum. While it burned, he sang a verse of the Star-Spangled Banner. I believe that stripping incident was almost as embarrassing as the other one involving the Duke lacrosse team, Ed. Each of these incidents actually happened and are taught. Remember now, this guy was threatened with being fired, or suggested he be fired, because he says marriage is that between a man and a woman. Number 4, a porn star was once paid to give a speech at the University of North Carolina. The topic was safe sodomy. And after her speech, the feminist pornographer sold autographed butt plugs to students in attendance. I'm not sure whether the ink could contribute to rectal cancer. I'm no health expert, but I do know, Ed, that it was pretty darned embarrassing when the media picked up that story. Number 5. A few years ago at North Carolina Chapel Hill, a feminist group built a large vibrator museum in the middle of the campus quad as part of their Orgasm Awareness Week. Now, Ed, I think that was probably the climax of the semester, academically speaking, but they certainly weren't too embarrassed to display a vibrator made out of wood back in the 1920s. Keep your batteries charged, Ed. We're about halfway done here. Number 6. A feminist administrator, UNC Wilmington, sponsored a pro-abortion event. During the event, they sold T-shirts saying, "I had an abortion," to students who had had abortions. That's right, Ed. The students were encouraged to brag about the fact that they had killed their own kids. That's how the University of North Carolina system is preserving the future of our great Tar Heel state. The following semester, the same administrator sponsored a workshop teaching students how to appreciate their orgasms. I learned art appreciation in college, Ed. Today, college kids are taught orgasm appreciation. I'll let you decide whether that's an embarrassment to higher education, Ed. Now, that's 7 of them. There are 2 more to go. But this is the stuff, and this is not just at University of North Carolina. This stuff is common and happens in many places where the feminists have taken over the curriculum. I want to tell you who Mike Adams is. In addition to being the only tenured conservative professor at the University of North Carolina, the whole system, a criminology professor, he's at Wilmington. He is the author of a book called Letters to a Young Progressive: How to Avoid Wasting Your Life Protesting Things That You Don't Understand. Now, these things that he is citing in this letter to this bigoted Professor Ed, who wanted him fired because of his definition of marriage. He says marriage must require a man and a woman. It's just what it is. And that represented the biggest embarrassment ever to the whole University of North Carolina system, UNC system. So he wrote back, "I want you to keep in mind, North Carolina is a red state, and all of this deranged liberalism is taking place on campus there. It's even worse in other university systems. And this is just North Carolina. Probably doesn't have that many colleges. It's a red state." Now, here are the other 2 examples that he cited. A few years ago, a UNC English professor posted nude pictures of underage girls as a part of an art exhibit at the university library. The provost then ordered the nude pictures to be moved away from the library and into the university union. Not taken down, moved. This decision was made after several pedophiles had previously been caught downloading child pornography in the university library just a few yards away from the location of this display. The English professor was incensed, so she asked the faculty senate to censure the provost for violating her academic freedom. The faculty senate sided with the feminist professor. The provost was later pressured to leave the university. Now, let me run through that one again. A UNC English professor posted nude pictures of underage girls as an art exhibit in the university library. The provost ordered the pictures to be moved into the university union, away from the library. Not taken down, just moved. This decision was made after several pedophiles had previously been caught downloading child porn in the university library, just a few yards away from the display of nude pictures of underage girls. The English professor who had posted the nude photos of the underage girls was mad.
So she asked the faculty senate to censure the provost for violating her academic freedom, because she had academic freedom to post nude photos of underage girls in the library as an art exhibit. And the faculty sided with her, and the provost was pressured to leave the university. The ninth little factoid referenced in Mike Adams' letter: a different feminist professor at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, accused a male professor of putting tear gas in her office. She was later caught putting her mail in a microwave oven. She did this because she thought people were trying to poison her with anthrax and that the oven would neutralize the toxins. She was not placed on leave for psychiatric reasons. Instead, she was designated the university's official counter-terrorism expert. And then there's Mike Adams. He thinks marriage is between a man and a woman, and he is the biggest embarrassment on campus. So those are the choices, Ed. You can simply write back and tell me which of these professors, groups, or guest speakers has caused the biggest embarrassment to higher education. Now, my point in going through all of this is that Mika Brzezinski and Star Jones and Nancy Snyderman, I would have to imagine, are totally supportive of the feminist curriculum at all these institutions of higher learning, whether they know what's in it or not. This kind of stuff is routine. It happens as a matter of course. And so when you have Miley Cyrus going through her near porn act, to some people it's not unusual, to say the least, or strange at all. And some people are sitting around saying, what is the big deal? Because this is what many young women are taught. This is the kind of thing that they are exposed to expand their feminist horizons and so forth. Not every woman, of course, not every female student, but the feminist curriculum is what it is, and the women that sign up and take this stuff become radicalized more often than not. I don't think Miley Cyrus went to school. That's not my point. That's a whole different thing, why she did it, but the reaction to it. Here, Washington Post, guy named Clinton Yates. Miley Cyrus and the issues of slut-shaming and racial condescension. Wow, this ought to be good. Miley Cyrus is America's worst nightmare. Last night, with her performance at the MTV Video Music Awards, she proved that many people in this country are still preoccupied with slut-shaming and coded racial condescension in the context of entertainment. Her performance of We Can't Stop is clearly the most talked about moment of the show, but for all the wrong reasons. Her bawdy performance that featured Miley and other dancers twerking on stage drew criticism as lewd, grotesque, and shameful. Mika Brzezinski of MSNBC went so far as to say that Cyrus is obviously deeply troubled, deeply disturbed, clearly has confidence issues, probably an eating disorder. But what is so disturbing about Miley Cyrus? It seems that we still can't handle what it's like for a young woman to be able to perform as she chooses without layering in a heavy helping of insults. While Cyrus was condemned for grinding on thick, very little criticism has been laid on the singer himself for his role in the performance. The nastiest of the comments have implied that Cyrus is somehow diseased because of her preferred dance methods. When the white 20-year-old former child star and daughter of a country singer goes on stage and does something that the so-called ruling classes deem unseemly, it starts a firestorm. When scores of young women across the globe take the stage to express themselves in exactly the same way at an EDM concert by Diplo and plaster their exploits all over social networks, no one bats an eye. And by the way, it should be pointed out that in hip-hop music videos, this has been going on for a long, long time. Nobody says a word about it. But it hasn't also been seen at the MTV Music Awards. And so the question, if Beyonce had done this with Jay-Z, what would the reaction have been?